For the first time, the independent Senator Patrick Brazeau is going public with his side of the story, his fight against the Senate committee over his expenses. Remember, a week ago, the Senate committee ordered the embattled senator to pay close to $48,000 in residence and travel expenses. That report, which we've been talking about, ordered Senator Brazeau to pay back the cash, accusing him of wrongly declaring his primary residence was in a place called Maniwaki. That's 124 kilometers away from Ottawa. Well, today, he's just written a letter to the head of the Senate committee, Senator Tkachuk, calling for a public meeting over the expense claims. Remember, the meeting that determined he had to pay back was done in secret. Senator Brazeau says, have it out in the open. Let me show you what the letter says. In the letter just sent today, Senator Brazeau says, quote, I was asked to reimburse the housing allowance. This is quite surprising, as Deloitte has found no improprieties, no misuse of funds, and no intent to skirt the rules in any way on my part. Where rules have been broken, it is right and proper that reimbursements are made. When a senator follows the rules and is found to have done so by an outside audit, yet is asked to reimburse something clearly is amiss. I encourage all honorable senators to demand accountability and transparency, beginning with an open meeting into these issues. Senator Brazeau claims the Senate report doesn't match the independent report from the accounting firm Deloitte. Lots of questions about that. Did Nigel Wright offer to pay his expenses? What about the PMO? Did he talk to the PMO? And what happened when the Prime Minister kicked him out of the Conservative caucus? What evidence does that bear in this case? For the first time since the Senate report came out, since he was charged with assault, sexual assault, and kicked out of the Conservative caucus, I'm joined now by Senator Brazeau. We'll speak about all these issues. I want to start with the Senate. Thanks for being here. Why did you decide to write this letter today?
Well, essentially, look, this housing issue has been on the books for the last 4 months. And there was an internal audit that was conducted by Deloitte, which basically concluded that I did not misuse funds. When I did go to Maniwaki, I did claim. When I did not go to Maniwaki, I did not claim. But yet, the Senate Committee on Internal Economy basically made conclusions contrary to the Deloitte audit. So I was pretty puzzled and surprised at the conclusions of the committee.
In the letter, I'm going to read, so viewers know, I'm reading a letter that Senator Brazeau has just sent to David Tkachuk. He is the senator in charge of their Board of Internal Economy. And you ask 4 or 5 critical questions. By what process did the committee come to its conclusion regarding my primary residence? Why is that so important to you?
Well, because basically the committee met behind closed doors and didn't offer myself an opportunity to respond to whatever was going to come out of their report. And so I think it's important for, I mean, at the end of the day, if I don't know what happened, certainly Canadians don't know what happened. So I think it's important to have a public meeting so that they can explain the process by which they came to their conclusions.
What do you mean by a public meeting? Are you saying you'd like the Board of Internal Economy, that Senator Tkachuk and the senators openly, and you would testify and answer questions in front of them? Is that what you want?
Absolutely.
So you want this is a committee that doesn't meet in public. You're saying you would welcome an open opportunity to talk to them with your lawyer?
Well, with my lawyer, absolutely, and for the committee themselves to explain the process by which they came to conclusions that were contrary to the Deloitte audit.
All right, I want to get to the specifics of this, but I want to show our audience here. This is, and your contention is that the Deloitte report, which I've got in my hands here, essentially says that your primary residence is in Maniwaki. Let me show you what the Deloitte report says, and I'll show, quote, the regulations and guidelines applicable during the period of our examination of Senator Brazeau do not include criteria for determining primary residence. As such, we are not able to assess the status of the primary residence declared by Senator Brazeau against existing regulations. So that's the first thing they say. However, they go on to say, and do we have this second board here, that here's what they conclude. They say there are criteria, though, that the Senate committee uses. This is the Senate committee, and this is from the Deloitte report. They say a copy of a driver's license, a copy of a provincial health card, relevant information from personal income tax return providing provincial tax information, and a signed statement indicating where the senator votes. That's from the Senate committee's request to assess primary residence. The report, Deloitte's report, goes on to say, quote, We understand that the Standing Committee agreed that if a senator met all 4 indicators supported by travel documentation, they were deemed to have been interviewed. No further work was completed as they were deemed to have met the primary residence case. And it frankly goes on to say, and I'm reading it here, folks, you met the primary residence case.
Well, not only did I meet the primary residence case, but I was the test case when I first met with the Subcommittee on Internal Economy back in December, which set the bar to have those 4 documents provided to the Senate Internal Economy, which I have done.
But the Senate report, so here's how it works. Deloitte does the report, Senator. Then here's how they determined you owe $48,000. They said, quote, this is the Senate Internal Economy report, based on the evidence presented in the examination of the report, while recognizing the ties that Senator Brazeau has to Maniwaki, his level of presence at his primary residence does not support such a declaration. It is contrary to the meaning of the word primary and to the purpose and the intent of the provision of living allowance in the National Capital Region. That's why you owe the money. They basically said you live 125 kilometers away. You were only there, according to Deloitte, 10% of the time. 90% of the time you weren't in Maniwaki. And that's why they say you basically live here, you owe the taxpayer money.
Well, I never hid that fact from the beginning, but let's face the facts. I do, as a senator, and was working 5 days a week. I was here from Monday to Friday. And so I had a lot of roles and responsibilities. I was the vice chair of the Human Rights Committee, so I had a lot of extra duties to do. And let's face it, on the weekends, senators and other parliamentarians have a lot of other places to go, speeches to give. There's some political functions they must attend, and I was no different.
But Senator Brazeau, to be fair, Deloitte says we question the eligibility of expenses related to travel to Ottawa when no Senate business was documented. And what they say is you did not document your business, not Senate business, 317 days. 58% of the time, they say, they have no documentation verifying that you were doing Senate business. What do you say to that?
Well, at the end of the day, what's important is that when I was not doing Senate business, I was not claiming any expenses from the Senate or the taxpayers.
But they say you were. We question the eligibility of expenses related to travel to Ottawa when no Senate business is documented. What does that mean? That means you were claiming when there's no documentary evidence that you were doing Senate work. And the Senate, clearly they thought, there's no proof that you're doing Senate work, you were living here, so you owe the taxpayer money.
But again, at the end of the day, when I was traveling to Maniwaki, whether it was on Senate or personal business, senators are entitled to have their travels covered. And when I did go to Maniwaki, I did submit travel expenses. And at the end of the day, in the last 2 years, I don't believe I even have $3,000 of travel expenses covering those 2 years.
But why does Deloitte, when they looked at your time, 317 days, 58% were in Ottawa, the nature of which is unknown? I guess my question is, what the heck were you doing in Ottawa? If you're not doing Senate business 58% of the time, does the taxpayer look at that and say, sorry, Senator Brazeau, you're basically living in Ottawa, not in Maniwaki, we shouldn't be funding you?
Well, the fact of the matter, again, is that I was working 5 days a week. And 5 out of 7 days is easy to do the math. But again,
they say it's not documented. They say there's no proof you were doing Senate work on those days. For 317 days, 58% of the time in Ottawa.
Well, look, there are senators who are in town for 3 days out of the week. There are some who are here for 4 days. But because of my roles and responsibilities in terms of the Senate sittings and my committee work, I was here 5 days a week.
But to be fair, your attendance record in the Senate has come up as one of the worst attendance records. So, I mean, people will wonder, what were you doing in Ottawa if you weren't attending the Senate?
Well, again, I was here, obviously, working. I mean, if you're talking about the Senate attendance, that was over a year ago. But I mean, in terms of for example, when we came back in September, I was here 5 days a week.
Can you tell me then, you don't think, because the definition of primary residence here in the Deloitte, you met all the criteria. For example, Senator Duffy, of those 4 indices, driver's license, health card, income tax, voting, he only met 1 out of 4. You met 4 out of 4. Do you think you followed the rules? That's your contention? That's why you don't owe money?
Well, look, I followed the rules. If I did any wrongdoing whatsoever, obviously, of course, I would repay what is owed. But all I'm asking is for the Senate Committee on Internal Economy to share the process by which they came to their conclusions and to show Canadians where I did any wrongdoing.
Do you think, what in your view is the reason that they've asked you to pay back the money?
Well, I don't know, and this is why I'm asking for a public meeting. I think that not only do I deserve it, but Canadians deserve it.
Did you ever get approached from the Prime Minister's office, the Chief of Staff, Nigel Wright, and say, can we help you out? Can I pull out a personal check and pay for your expenses?
None whatsoever.
Have you talked to Nigel Wright about this?
None whatsoever.
What did you make of the fact that apparently Mike Duffy got his $90,000 paid for by Nigel Wright?
Well, look, I'm not going to comment on other senators and that specific situation. I'm here to talk about the fact that I believe I did not do any wrongdoing. I did not break any rules, procedures, or whatnot. And I don't believe until the Senate committee clearly demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt that I did any wrongdoing, that I should repay this money.
Does this have to do with the fact that you've been controversial for, I mean, look, and I got to ask you about this. You haven't talked about it. Obviously, you've been charged with assault and sexual assault. Do you think that has a bearing on how you've been treated?
Well, it's a possibility. Obviously, when some people are in, sometimes when they're down, people will kick them. So it's, sometimes it's easy to put people under the bus.
When the charges were laid against you back in February, I'm going to quote the Prime Minister. He said, "It is extremely appalling and disappointing. We all feel very let down." That's how he described what happened to you. What do you make of the Prime Minister's remarks?
Well, look, obviously we live in a system where our justice system where we're innocent until proven guilty. I mean, the Prime Minister said the words that he said, which were a little bit surprising given the fact that I have not been proven guilty of any of the charges yet. But having said that, I'll have my day in court, and I look forward to clearing my name when that process happens.
What did you get any contact with the Prime Minister, his Prime Minister's office? Did you try to contact them after you got kicked out?
No, I did not.
How did you find out you were kicked out?
I found out the next day when I posted bail. I found out from my office that a phone call had been put in by the leader of the government in the Senate that I was in fact kicked out of caucus.
Obviously, there's a publication ban around a lot of aspects of this. There's been allegations that you were intoxicated. Can you comment on that?
Look, this matter is before the courts. This matter was not mentioned anywhere. But having said that, it's before the courts, and like I said, I mean, I will have my day in court, and when that day comes, I will clear my name.
You say you'll clear your name. Do you think there's a chance you'll return to the Conservative caucus?
I'm not going there yet. I'm just focused on clearing my name for this housing issue, and then subsequent to that, other processes that are in place, and then we'll see when the time comes.
Some have said the reason that you're taking a lot of the brunt of this is that you have personal issues, and you've been a controversial senator personally, on various issues, but also you've been controversial in First Nations circles, certainly around Chief Teresa Spence. And some have said, look, he's not a good communicator with Aboriginal people, and therefore he's not as useful. What do you make of that?
Well, look, it's true that at times I have been controversial, and I have been controversial because I've always advocated for the need for more accountability and transparency. And with this housing issue, I think it's no different. And I've always suffered the consequences of calling for more accountability and transparency. But, I'm a man of principle. I still believe in it, and I will continue to fight for it.
To be fair, you've also been controversial, for example, for tweeting. I mean, you tweeted about Canadian Press's Jennifer Ditchburn changing the D to a B, inferring that she was a bitch. I mean, that's tough stuff. Do you regret doing that?
Well, obviously, that was almost a year ago. I regret doing that. I have since apologized to her. She has accepted my apology. We have seen each other several times on the street, and we have said hello, but that's water under the bridge.
But does it go to character? I mean, people are looking at, your reputation's under fire. The charges, now the allegations that you misspent taxpayer money, which I know you've talked about that. I mean, your reputation's under fire in a way we've rarely seen in the Senate, and you're speaking out about it. But do those issues, like on Twitter, Do those go to how people perceive the character of Senator Patrick Brazeau?
Well, perhaps in some circles, but at the end of the day, the people, the friends and family and others who do know me on a personal level know that I'm a man of principle. They know that I will fight to defend my name and reputation, and that's why I'm here, and that's what I'm going to continue to do.
All right, you have no response from Senator Tkachuk?
As of yet, I do not.
No response. Apparently, we've tried to reach him, and apparently he's getting surgery and he's unavailable. Will you remain an independent senator?
I will remain an independent senator.
Well, some have wondered if you would drop out
until the criminal case is concluded.
Okay. Have the RCMP contacted you? We've heard reports that the RCMP is investigating your housing claims. Have you heard from the RCMP?
No, I have not.
They haven't contacted
No.
you. Yeah, and we've also heard reports that you may have your wages garnished. In other words, the Senate may just, if you don't want to pay, they'll just take them. What do you make of that? Have you heard anything about that?
Well, I've heard, like others, through several media sources, that that's what the Senate may be looking at. But having said that, again, I'm looking and I'm calling for a public meeting so that we could air out these issues before other options are explored.
There's lots of reports before about your primary residence, and you heard these reports. A reporter from CTV, Bob Fife, went up to Maniwaki, and he said he did a report. I mean, he talked to all sorts of people, and they said, no, we never see Brazeau around here. He's never around here. He doesn't live here. What do you say to that?
Well, that's funny. I mean, I've always said that was a drive-by smear because obviously the media is the media, and what was omitted by the media piece is the individuals who actually said that they did see me there, that I do go golfing there, that I do go hunting and fishing there, and I do go have the odd beer at the bar with several people. Okay,
but 10% of the time, is that, if the fact that you only spend 10% of your time there, does that qualify as a primary residence to you if you're barely there?
Well, look, the rules and regulations, whether people like them or not, are in place in the Senate guidelines. And nowhere does it state that any senator has to spend 5, 10, 15, or 50% of the time in their primary residence. And if we were going to allocate a certain percentage at the primary residence, I don't think that none of the senators would qualify because most of them are here during the week.
If you had one message to the Prime Minister now, looking at all this, what would you say to the Prime Minister?
I would say to talk to the Senate Committee on Internal Economy because this is one of the most powerful committees in Parliament because most of the meetings are behind closed doors. So it's time to ask for more transparency and have the committee come out and explain exactly the process and the conclusions they reached, not only for myself, but for all other senators who were looked into.
All right. In the meantime, you're not paying back the money?
Until I get clear answers to my questions, which I believe I deserve, the answer is no.
I got to leave it there. Senator Patrick Brazeau.